In November 2024, an ITV news crew landed in Kathmandu with a list of names. 112 names. All men. All young. All dead. Each name on that list belonged to a migrant worker who traveled to Saudi Arabia for a construction job. Each name had a death certificate, and each certificate said the same thing: natural causes. The ITV journalists spent 3 weeks knocking on doors, interviewing families, collecting photographs of young men who left home healthy and came back in sealed coffins. What they found was not a story about individual tragedies. It was evidence of a system designed to make thousands of deaths invisible. This is the investigation Saudi Arabia tried to bury. In this video, I will expose how ITV News traced the death toll back to construction sites across the kingdom. I will reveal the medical fraud that allowed thousands of deaths to be classified as natural causes without a single autopsy. And I will show you why the governments of Nepal, India, and Bangladesh have known about this for years and done nothing. The bodies Saudi Arabia tried to hide are not buried in the desert. They were sent home in boxes, and the evidence was hidden in plain sight inside 5 embassies in Riyadh. The investigation began not with ITV, but with a small London-based organization called Fair Esquire. Their researchers had been collecting data quietly for years. Fair Esquire filed Freedom of Information requests with the embassies of Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and the Philippines in Riyadh. The numbers that came back were devastating. More than 21,000 workers from these 5 countries alone had died in Saudi Arabia since 2016. 21,000, not estimates, not projections, confirmed deaths registered by diplomatic missions responsible for their citizens. India's embassy recorded over 7,800, Nepal over 3,000, Bangladesh 2,500, Pakistan nearly 2,000, the Philippines over 1,000. But the raw number was only the beginning. The real story was buried in the cause of death classifications. 74% of all deaths were classified as natural causes: cardiac arrest, respiratory failure, acute heart failure, for men overwhelmingly between 20 and 40 years old. ITV partnered with medical experts to analyze the death certificates. What they found was a pattern that one cardiologist described as medically impossible at this scale. The medical analysis is where the cover-up becomes undeniable. ITV consulted with cardiologists and occupational health specialists across 3 countries. The baseline rate of sudden cardiac death in healthy males aged 20 to 40 is approximately 1 in 100,000 per year. Among migrant workers in Saudi Arabia, the rate was more than 50 times higher. A statistical anomaly so extreme it demands investigation. One London-based cardiologist who reviewed the data for ITV was blunt about what the numbers revealed. He told ITV that these numbers cannot be explained by genetics, lifestyle, or pre-existing conditions. Something environmental is killing these workers on a massive scale. The something is almost certainly heat exposure. A study published in The Lancet found that exertional heat stroke among construction workers in Gulf states produces symptoms identical to cardiac arrest. When a worker collapses from heat exposure, the heart stops. The death certificate lists cardiac arrest, technically accurate, deliberately misleading. Saudi Arabia does not require autopsies for deaths classified as natural causes. Without an autopsy, heat exposure as the primary cause is never recorded. That is, government speak for the truth would cost us billions, because workplace fatality classifications would trigger sanctions, liability, and the collapse of their recruitment pipeline. ITV's investigation then moved from medical records to the construction sites themselves. Working conditions on NEOM and other Vision 2030 projects. Former workers and safety consultants described conditions that made death predictable. 12-hour shifts in temperatures exceeding 50 degrees. Water rationed by supervisors. Saudi labor law mandates a midday work ban during summer. ITV obtained testimony from 14 workers across 3 different mega-project sites, confirming the ban was systematically ignored. Workers who complained were threatened with deportation. Under the kafala system, losing your job means losing your legal right to remain in the country. One Indian electrical engineer who worked on a NEOM subcontract for 11 months spoke to ITV from Dubai after leaving Saudi Arabia. He described the safety culture as performance theater. He described what he saw on the ground versus what appeared in official reports. The gap between paperwork and reality was a chasm. One water station for 200 workers in 50-degree desert heat. The math alone is a death sentence. The investigation also documented what happens after a worker dies. The body is taken to a camp medical facility. A Saudi doctor signs the certificate. The body is prepared for transport. No autopsy performed. Saudi Arabia does not require one for natural causes. The family receives the body weeks later in a sealed coffin, a certificate in Arabic they cannot read, and a message, "Do not open the coffin." ITV interviewed 17 families in Nepal who had lost relatives. Not a single family was offered an autopsy. Not one received a translated certificate. Not one was told the specific circumstances of their relative's death. 17 families. 17 sealed coffins. 0 investigations. One Bangladeshi family whose son had worked on a different Gulf construction project before transferring to Saudi Arabia described the contrast to ITV. The timeline of this cover-up runs parallel to the timeline of Vision 2030 itself. In 2016, Vision 2030 launched with global fanfare. Construction mobilization began immediately. Workers started arriving from across South Asia, Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, the Philippines, tens of thousands per year, each one processed through the kafala system. By 2017, the recruitment pipeline was operating at unprecedented volume. Construction companies needed bodies faster than agencies could supply them. By 2018, Nepal's embassy in Riyadh was processing an average of 6 death cases per week, 6 families notified per week. The embassy flagged the rate to Kathmandu. No action was taken. In 2020, the pandemic temporarily slowed construction. Death rates dropped proportionally. When construction resumed in 2021, the deaths accelerated again. The correlation between construction activity and death rates was, according to Fair Square researchers, statistically unmistakable. More building meant more bodies. By 2023, ITV and Fair Square had compiled enough data to approach the Saudi government directly. They submitted detailed questions to the Saudi Ministry of Labor. The ministry did not respond. ITV sent follow-up requests through diplomatic channels. No response. They contacted NEOM's communications office directly. No response. 3 separate channels of inquiry. 3 walls of silence. When the investigation aired in November 2024, Saudi Arabia's only public statement described the reporting as inaccurate and misleading. They provided no data to support that claim. Several factors have allowed this cover-up to persist for nearly a decade. First, the autopsy gap. Without independent post-mortem examination, the true cause of death is permanently unknowable. Second, the language barrier. Death certificates in Arabic sent to families in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh who cannot read Arabic. Translation would reveal the pattern. The absence of translation conceals it. Third, the geographic isolation. Construction sites hundreds of kilometers from any city. Workers have no access to independent medical facilities or legal representation. Fourth, the economic dependency. Nepal receives over $3 billion annually in remittances from Saudi Arabia, publicly challenging the kingdom risks that revenue stream. Finally, the kafala system itself. Workers who witness deaths or unsafe conditions cannot speak publicly without their employer's permission. Whistleblowing means deportation. The digital trail is equally damning. Workers who attempted to document conditions had their phones confiscated upon arrival at project sites. ITV obtained footage from workers who hid secondary phones, brief clips of overcrowded dormitories, inadequate medical facilities, heat so extreme that metal handrails caused contact burns. Facebook groups and WhatsApp chains among Nepali and Bangladeshi workers have become informal death registries. Families post photographs, ask if anyone has information, compare death certificate language. One WhatsApp group with over 12,000 members serves as a missing persons network. Families post names of workers they haven't heard from in months. Sometimes responses come from other workers. Sometimes responses never come. The consequences ripple outward in every direction. The ITV investigation documented families in Nepal who had lost their primary earner and now faced debt collectors. Recruitment agencies charged workers $3,000 to $5,000 in fees before departure. That debt was secured against family property. When the worker dies, the debt remains. The property is seized. The family loses both their son and their home. ITV filmed a family in Dating District whose 26-year-old son died at a construction site in Riyadh. Certificate said cardiac arrest. Compensation was $2,800. The recruitment debt was $4,000. The family now owes more than when their son left. His death made them poorer. That is the economics of the system Saudi Arabia built. Across Nepal, ITV identified a pattern. Families of deceased workers being pursued by recruitment agencies for outstanding debt. Some agencies threatened legal action against grieving parents. In the cruelest irony, some families send a second son to Saudi Arabia to pay off the debt created by the first son's death. The cycle feeds itself. At the government level, Nepal, India, and Bangladesh have all signed bilateral labor agreements with Saudi Arabia. On paper, these agreements include worker protections. In practice, none have reduced the death rate. What do these governments know that they aren't saying? Nepal's foreign ministry possesses the complete death records, annual reports, cause of death breakdowns, monthly trends. They have chosen not to publish them. What happens when the scale of a cover-up becomes too large for any single government to contain? This is the question the ITV investigation forces into the open. 21,000 deaths is not a statistic. It is a pattern of institutional negligence maintained across 8 years by multiple governments on both sides. To be fair, Saudi Arabia has announced labor reforms, modifications to the kafala system in 2021, a new occupational health framework in 2023, but Human Rights Watch found reforms inconsistently enforced. ETV's own interviews confirmed that on remote construction sites, nothing had changed. Passports still confiscated. Complaints still punished. The occupational health framework relies on employer self-reporting. The employers classifying deaths as natural causes are now reporting their own safety compliance. Asking construction companies to audit their own death rates is like asking the accused to write the verdict. The outcome is predetermined. The uncomfortable truth is this: independent autopsies would reveal what is killing these workers. Saudi Arabia has refused every request. The 2034 World Cup will require an entirely new wave of construction workers. FIFA has been publicly urged by Amnesty International to demand independent safety monitoring as a condition of the tournament. Qatar's World Cup saw an estimated 6,500 worker deaths. International pressure eventually forced limited reforms. Saudi Arabia's death toll is already 3 times higher, and the World Cup construction hasn't started. The numbers speak for themselves, and the construction for the World Cup hasn't even started. Saudi Arabia sold the world a vision of the future: glass towers, mirror cities, a ski resort in the desert, the most ambitious construction program in human history. What they didn't tell you is that 21,000 workers have already died building it, and 74% of those deaths were recorded as natural causes. without a single independent autopsy. ITV found the bodies Saudi Arabia tried to hide, not in mass graves, not in the desert, in embassy filing cabinets and sealed coffins, in families' living rooms across Nepal and India and Bangladesh, hidden in plain sight for 8 years. You've been told this is progress, the future of living, but a future built on 21,000 uninvestigated deaths is not a future. It is a crime scene with better architecture. Every one of those 21,000 workers had a name, a family, a photograph someone is still holding. Their families deserve autopsies. They deserve translated death certificates. They deserve to know what killed their sons and brothers and husbands. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you've worked on a Gulf construction project, your testimony matters. Subscribe for the truth about Saudi Arabia's mega projects, because this is the investigation. Wait until you see what they did to the tribe that refused to leave.